a family with a father, mother, and siblings might seem like a normal aspect of many households. However, for some children, this is a distant dream. Some children grow up amidst the turmoil of parental divorce due to irreconcilable differences, and worse still, these differences sometimes lead to irreversible tragedies, leaving deep emotional scars on the children who are the product of their parents' once happy union. The case we will examine today is a heartbreaking example of such a tragedy. In 2016 in Perth, the capital and largest city of Western Australia, known for its mild climate and stunning scenery along the Swan River, a tragic incident occurred on July 2nd, 2016. Perth, often a popular tourist destination, witnessed an event that shocked the community. It was an ordinary day with clear skies and beautiful weather. Fisherman Alex Sambell and his friends went fishing on the Swan River. Arriving at the river around 7:30 a.m., they noticed an unusual sight: a floating blue chest on the water. This was strange because, according to Alex, the Swan River was always pristine. Alex decided to pull the chest ashore. Upon retrieving it, he found the chest to be surprisingly heavy, sparking his curiosity about its contents. However, when he opened the lid, he was horrified to discover a human leg inside. Terrified, Alex quickly reported the incident to the police. Australian police swiftly arrived at the scene and determined that the chest contained the remains of a woman. Through their investigation, they discovered several important clues. First, the cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head with a heavy object. The crime was estimated to have occurred 2 to 3 days prior, due to the severe damage to the head and face. The victim's appearance was unrecognizable, making it impossible to identify her at first glance. However, authorities confirmed that the victim was of Asian descent, standing 1.58 meters tall, weighing 59 kilograms and estimated to be between 35 and 45 years old. The victim's body was found in a semi-nude state, wearing a black t-shirt with a Tokyo Disneyland logo and a blue vest, while the lower half of the body was unclothed. In addition to the body, the blue chest contained several small bricks, likely placed there by the perpetrator to increase its weight and ensure it would sink to the riverbed. Police collected fingerprints and DNA samples from the victim, but there were no matches in the national database. As a result, Australian police sought assistance from the International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol. While awaiting Interpol's response, Australian authorities worked to reconstruct the victim's appearance for further investigation. Despite the damage to her face, it was noted that the woman had distinctive tattoos. The police publicly released this information, hoping to find someone who could provide relevant leads. The lead investigator handling the case stated that the victim appeared to have been in good health and was unlikely to have been struggling in life. He appealed to the public, saying that the victim must have had friends, family, or acquaintances who would have noticed her absence. The police urged anyone aware of a missing person in their vicinity to contact them immediately. Although the case received extensive media coverage and the police fielded over 250 calls from individuals claiming to have information, most of these were irrelevant or unhelpful to the investigation. Divers were sent to the Swan River to search for additional clues. However, the search was challenging due to the vast area. After considerable effort, they discovered a bicycle underwater, with a large cutting board attached to it. It appeared that the perpetrator used the bicycle to transport the chest to the riverbank. Additionally, a pair of prescription glasses was found underwater, though it was unclear whether they were connected to the case. They also attempted to use 3D technology to reconstruct the victim's facial features and release the images. However, the case saw no significant progress until 2 months later. In September 2016, Wan Ding, a 25-year-old student at the University of Melbourne, visited the Perth police station to report her mother missing. Wan stated that the last time she saw her mother was on June 30th. Since moving to Melbourne for her studies, Wan had only communicated with her mother via text messages. When she graduated and returned home, she discovered her mother was missing. Her phone calls went unanswered and neighbors reported not seeing her mother either. The Perth police visited Wan Ding's home, located in an affluent neighborhood in Mossman Park. Upon inspection, they found no signs of foul play. The house was clean and showed no indications of forced entry. When police saw a photo of her mother, they noticed a striking resemblance to the unidentified victim they had been investigating for 2 months. To confirm their suspicions, police collected medical records and DNA samples from Wan Ding's mother. After comparison, they finally identified the victim in the blue chest floating on the river as Wan Ding's mother, Chun Pei-wen, a 58-year-old woman. The first step in the investigation was to analyze Chun Pei-wen's personal relationships. Through interviews and inquiries, police confirmed that Chun was a wealthy woman owning multiple properties in Australia. She was also a board member of a company. Originally from China, she had previously done business in Singapore before moving to Perth in 1999 and becoming an Australian citizen. Chun was multilingual and a talented artist. Neighbors described Chun Pei-wen as a reserved and mysterious woman who rarely interacted with others. She had limited relationships and seldom communicated with her extended family. This helped police quickly identify two suspects. The first suspect was her ex-husband Wan Onbing, a 67-year-old man living in Singapore. Their relationship seemed strained, and one of the reasons Chun moved to Australia was to prevent her daughter from meeting Wan Onbing. Investigating Wan Onbing, police discovered that he had flown from Singapore to Australia on June 30th. Since the incident involving Chun occurred around the same time, Wan was a strong suspect. Another notable detail was Wan Onbing's financial troubles. He was reportedly struggling with his business and burdened with significant debt. In contrast, Chun Pei-wen was wealthy, which could have motivated Wan Onbing to commit the crime. The second suspect was the victim's daughter, Wan Ding. Although she was the one who reported her mother missing, certain details raised police suspicions. First, she only reported her mother's disappearance 2 months after the fact, which was highly unusual. Secondly, during the 2 months her mother was missing, Wan Ding graduated from university. At her graduation ceremony on August 4th, unlike other students who typically invited their entire families, but police found a photo of her only with her father. Wan Onbing. Why was her father, who lived far away in Singapore, invited while her mother, who lived in Australia, was not? Wan Ding explained that she had invited both her parents. Her father flew to Australia on June 30th and went straight to their Perth home. However, her parents got into an argument. Her mother, upset with their interaction, refused to allow her father to attend the graduation ceremony. Her father disagreed, which infuriated her mother. She packed her belongings and left the house, getting into a white car driven by an Asian man. Later, her mother texted her, saying she would not attend the graduation. Instead, she planned to go to Switzerland for health treatment and later travel abroad with friends. Wan Ding emphasized that June 30th was the last time she saw her mother. The following day, she returned to her university in Melbourne. From then on, she only kept in touch with her mother through text messages and never met her in person again. When the police questioned Wan Onbing, his account was very similar to his daughter's. He claimed that after attending his daughter's graduation, he returned to Singapore unaware of Chun Pei-wen's disappearance and subsequent murder. While their story sounded plausible, it was riddled with inconsistencies. Surveillance cameras near Chun Pei-wen's house showed no sign of a white car on June 30th. Moreover, immigration records indicated no evidence of Chun leaving the country on that date. It appeared that father and daughter had colluded to create a fabricated story. The police suspected them of conspiring to murder Chun Pei-wen. Based on their investigation, prosecutors officially charged the father and daughter. When confronted with the allegations, the two provided completely different accounts. Wan Ding stated, "On June 30th, my father arrived in Perth from Singapore. He mainly came to discuss my graduation ceremony. At the time, I was downstairs while my parents were talking upstairs. Not long after, they began arguing over property and financial issues. My mother became furious and started shouting. I was standing near the staircase and could hear the sound of metal objects clashing. I called out, 'Mom, what's happening?' But my father didn't let me go upstairs. After some time, he came downstairs. He calmly told me what had happened. He said they had argued and my mother had hit him. In a fit of anger, he grabbed a tissue box from the table and swung it toward her head, accidentally causing her to fall and stop breathing. He insisted it was just an accident. I couldn't bear the thought of losing both my parents if my father went to prison. So, I chose not to report it to the police. Instead, I carefully cleaned up the blood and all related evidence in the house. To divert the police's attention, I fabricated a story about my mother traveling during the 2 months of her disappearance. I sent multiple text messages to her phone, pretending she was still alive. At my graduation, only my father attended and we took photos together to help him financially after my mother's death. I transferred a total of $135,000 to him in 2 transactions. When the police asked how Chin Pei Wen's body ended up in the Swan River, Wan Ding claimed she didn't know. She said that after her mother's death, she was terrified. Her father assured her that everything had been taken care of, so she wasn't involved in handling the body. Hearing his daughter's account, Wan Onbing was horrified. If the court believed her version, he would be in serious trouble. Consequently, his testimony contradicted Wan Ding's. He said, "My daughter is lying. The truth is, on June 30th, I was invited to Perth to discuss her university graduation. However, when I entered the house, I only saw my daughter. My ex-wife, Chin Pei Wen, wasn't there. I asked my daughter where her mother was, and she told me that after secretly contacting me, her mother found out and they argued. Things escalated and they started throwing objects at each other. In a moment of panic, my daughter grabbed a document box from the table and struck her mother's head. Chin Pei Wen was severely injured and bedridden. By the next day, she had passed away." Wan Onbing continued, "I was distraught when I heard about this. Following my daughter's instructions, I found my ex-wife's body in a nearby trash bin. I love my daughter dearly. She was about to graduate and had a bright future ahead. I didn't want her to go to prison, so I didn't report the incident to the police. Instead, I conspired with her to dispose of Chin Pei Wen's body. Together, we used a bicycle to transport the body to the Swan River and dumped it there. We meticulously cleaned the blood and all evidence in the house and fabricated a story that Chin Pei Wen had left in a car driven by an Asian man to travel in Europe, hoping to divert the police's attention. I did everything to protect my daughter, but I never expected her to turn the blame onto me. She's truly an excellent actress." The stories presented by the father and daughter were both coherent and compelling, leaving Australian police deeply perplexed about who the true culprit was. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury reached its final conclusion. They believed the testimony of Wan Ding. Judge Joseph McGrath sentenced Wan Onbing, deemed to have the strongest motive to life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years to serve before being eligible for parole. Meanwhile, Wan Ding was convicted as an accomplice for helping destroy evidence and lying to the police. She was sentenced to 4 years and 10 months in prison. When the verdict was announced, Wan Onbing remained unexpectedly calm, showing no visible emotion while Wan Ding broke down in tears. The judge's decision to trust Wan Ding's testimony was not without basis. Her classmates described her as a compassionate and empathetic person. Furthermore, her relationship with her mother was not as strained as some might have thought. On the contrary, Wan Onbing's behavior after the incident raised doubts. He remained indifferent and detached, continuing to work as usual and even cheerfully attending his daughter's graduation. He seemed to have exploited his daughter's trust, carefully orchestrating his false testimonies to cover up the truth, showing no signs of remorse. Thus, the case of the woman found dead in the Swan River was officially closed. However, lingering questions remain for those following the story. Was Wan Onbing truly the killer, or is there more to this mystery yet to be uncovered?
On a November night in 2011, the freezing air felt sharp against the skin, but the quiet of Southwark was shattered by the sharp crack of gunfire. Azizur Rani Khan collapsed, blood pooling beneath the cold streetlight. The latest victim of the bloody gang war engulfing South London, Khan was a link in the tragic chain wrought by the G Gang, a notorious group that had risen from the dark alleys of Brixton to become the most brutal force in the city. This war was not merely about bloody retribution, it was an unrelenting police crackdown, endless court trials, and bloody turf wars. Imagine this. In the late 2000s, from the harsh streets of Angeltown, Brixton, a new gang began to rise. The G Gang, a name echoing like gunfire, symbolizing ruthlessness and bloodshed. G stood for more than just gang. It embodied more horrifying concepts: guts, guns, and greed. Each word was steeped in violence and the thirst for money. Brixton had long been a territory for many gangs, where each new generation emerged to replace the previous one. However, the root of the problem never changed: poverty, violence, and crime. Angeltown was at the center of it all, previously dominated by the PDC, Peel Dem crew, also known as poverty-driven children. The PDC ruled the area until the early 2000s when many of their leaders were incarcerated, leaving a power vacuum. From the ashes of that power, the G-Gang began to rise. One of the most important groups leading to the formation of the G-Gang was the Y28S, founded by Barfa Joof, a former member of the PDC Brats, the youth wing of the PDC. The Y28S allied with other groups like Tiny OC from Myatsfield and Murder Zone from Somerleyton Estate to survive in the harsh world of Brixton. Their greatest rivals were the ruthless gangs from Peckham, and after a brutal attack where Y28S members were stabbed while unarmed, Y28S and Tiny OC understood that only by allying with each other could they survive. It was a historic moment when the G-Gang was established around 2007 with Barfa Joof as one of the key figures running it. Although Joof later withdrew from the gang world thanks to guidance from his probation officer, but his early influence was significant. At their peak, the G-Gang was believed to have over 100 members, mostly young men from allied groups, bloodthirsty individuals ready to engage in relentless warfare. The G-Gang did not arise naturally. They inherited the feuds from previous gangs with conflicts against the PYG, Peckham Young Guns, and GMG from Peckham, leading to frequent bloodshed. However, the G-Gang not only had enemies but also powerful allies such as Murder Zone, Organized Crime, and Original Brooklyn Youths. These alliances helped solidify their power in Brixton, where violence and terror spread like wildfire. By the early 2010s, the G-Gang had etched its name into the history of violence in South London. From their base in Angeltown, they spread their influence like a storm, each act of violence heightening the fear. The once peaceful streets were now haunted by their presence, with individuals who showed no fear of anyone, including the police. In the early days of the G-Gang, the colors green and purple were not mere colors but symbols of power and terror. Green from Organized Crime, OC, and purple from Y28SS. These two colors represented absolute loyalty and a clear message. Enemies could only bow down or face death. In 2009, a series of bloody, violent events marked the rise of the G-Gang. Surveillance footage showed groups of G-Gang members brazenly advancing deep into rival territory, challenging and threatening their opponents. These were not impulsive acts, but calculated moves aimed at asserting their undeniable power. From these violent steps, the G-Gang began to spread terror across South London. One of the most shocking events that year was the stabbing of a 13-year-old boy right outside a fast food restaurant in Camberwell. This was not just a random attack, but a piece of the relentless war between the G-Gang and the Peckham Young Guns, PYG. The fact that a young child became a victim only highlighted the brutality of this conflict. This incident caused the media to continuously mention the G-Gang, drawing public attention to the uncontrolled violence in South London. However, this was just the beginning. The G-Gang quickly became a top violent force, facing off against many major gangs. In 2010, a member of the PYG daringly drove into the heart of G-Gang territory, brandished a gun and opened fire. Such brazen shootouts occurred regularly between these two gangs, creating an atmosphere in Brixton that felt like a ticking time bomb. Another rival of the G-Gang was ABM, All About Money from Stockwell. The death of Zach Olumegbon, a 15-year-old boy allegedly linked to the G-Gang, became the last straw, pushing the conflict to an irreparable state. After Zach's death, the G-Gang did not hide their involvement, but instead openly acknowledged it as a challenge to all their rivals. The boy's death plunged the G-Gang into a legal whirlpool, with many gang members becoming wanted. The attacks did not stop there, as Trust No One, TN1, another gang in Brixton, frequently clashed with the G-Gang. In 2011, right outside the Brixton police station, a young member of TN1 was stabbed to death by a G-Gang member. This was a bold declaration of war, showcasing the gang's disregard for the law. They feared no one, not even the police. Tensions escalated further as the G-Gang faced off against the DSN, Don't Say Nuttin' gang from Croydon. Continuous knife fights and gun battles turned South London into a bloody battlefield. While these conflicts intensified, the G Gang did not stop at waging war. Guns and drugs became the pillars of their operations. They not only dealt drugs in Brixton, but also expanded their operations across the region from crack cocaine to firearms. The presence of guns, a rare weapon in England, made them more dangerous than ever. However, the rise of the G Gang also prompted the growth of rival gangs. In November 2011, Azazur Rani Khan was shot dead at a funeral in Southwark while attending the service for a G Gang member. The police had warned of the potential for violence, but no one could have anticipated this brazen assassination, which escalated the conflicts between the gangs to a breaking point. The peak of brutality came in March 2012 when 3 members of the G Gang, Nathaniel Grant, Kazim Kolawole, and Anthony McCalla, attempted to assassinate a rival member. When the target ran into a shop, they did not hesitate to fire wildly inside. Tragically, a bullet struck 5-year-old Thusha Kamaleswaran in the chest, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. All of England was shocked by the G Gang's ruthlessness as innocent victims were swept up in this unending bloody war. Violence did not just remain confined to small territorial battles. By 2012, the G Gang had turned into a deadly machine responsible for at least 3 murders and countless bloody assaults. Both the local council and the police believed that this gang was the primary cause of 3/4 of the youth-related violence in Brixton. These were not random encounters but deliberate attacks, each targeting specific individuals as strategic moves. 8 members were convicted of murder or conspiracy to commit murder, representing just the tip of the deadly iceberg that the G Gang had created, further cementing their image as the arch-enemy of South London. The horrifying statistics painted a grim picture of the impact the G Gang had on the community. With only about 50 members directly involved in criminal activities, their influence spread throughout Brixton. Violence, drug trafficking, and firearms turned many areas into no-go zones where even the police had to tread carefully. Not stopping there, 2 months after the previous horrifying shooting, the G Gang committed another brutal act. Temidayo Ogunai, an unfortunate young man who had his phone stolen, returned to Mayat's Fields to reclaim his belongings. However, he was unaware that he was walking into a deadly trap. Nathan McLeod, a cold-blooded member of the G Gang, ambushed and fatally stabbed Temidayo. This savage murder landed Nathan in prison for at least 14 years and made the G Gang even more notorious than ever. In 2012, with a string of continuous brutal actions, the G Gang officially became one of the most feared gangs in London. Their murders, assaults, and drug trafficking were not impulsive acts, but meticulously calculated steps to instill terror in the community. As their reign of violence reached its peak, the police could no longer stand by. The G Gang had crossed a line, and now it was time for the law to take action. In 2012, the police decided to launch an all-out campaign targeting the gang's leaders. This was not just a routine patrol, but a large-scale assault aimed at dismantling the G Gang from the ground up. Key leaders of the gang, including Nathaniel Grant, Kazim Kolawole, and Anthony McCalla, were arrested and sentenced to life in prison. This was the first major blow to the gang's dominance as the police targeted the masterminds behind their criminal activities. From that point, the gang gradually lost control and began to decline. However, the police crackdown did not happen overnight. Even with the leaders arrested, the G Gang still existed like a decapitated monster that had not yet died. It wasn't until April 2014, when over 700 police officers participated in a raid across London, that the G Gang was truly pushed back. These raids targeted 9 key areas, including Angeltown, the gang's main stronghold. They not only arrested members, but also sent a strong message that the G Gang's reign of terror was coming to an end. During the raids, police discovered numerous criminal activities ranging from drug trafficking and money laundering to firearm offenses and violence. This was a devastating blow to the G Gang, marking a significant turning point in the fight against gangs in South London. Chief Inspector Tim Champion affirmed that the campaign had significantly contributed to reducing violence with a sharp decline in stabbing incidents afterward. The collapse of the G Gang did not occur immediately, but it was the result of many accumulated factors. As the leaders were arrested, the gang fell into chaos, lacking direction from their heads, and younger members vied for power, but none could restore the dominance they once held. Internal battles gradually weakened the G Gang until they were ultimately erased from the map of violence in London. The terrifying reign they inflicted has come to an end, but the scars they left on the community will last forever. As the power struggle between gangs intensified, splinter groups began to emerge, adding to the chaos. The two most prominent factions were Rock Block 150 and SYU. Rock Block 150, or simply 150, was formed by young members seeking to distance themselves from the older generation. They not only had a distinct style, but also made a name for themselves in music, particularly in the UK drill genre, establishing a reputation as a new force. In contrast, SYU developed from the Summer Leighton estate, continuing the legacy of the GES gang, but operating independently, often clashing with each other. Tensions escalated with the emergence of the 76 gang, based in Brixton. The 76 gang quickly became a formidable force, frequently clashing with remnants of GES and other splinter groups. These conflicts not only weakened internal cohesion but also heightened chaos in the area. The relentless efforts of the police played a crucial role in suppressing the power of the GES gang. With a determination to dismantle all operations of this gang, police conducted raids in 2012 and 2014, critical moments in the fight against crime. By removing key figures and applying continuous pressure, GES fell into disarray. As a result, local crime rates began to drop, with youth-related violence in Brixton decreasing by up to 6.5%. The pressure from law enforcement not only diminished immediate threats, but also weakened the gang's control over the community. The constant police presence, coupled with anxiety over potential raids, made it difficult for the G Gang to recruit new members and maintain operations. The pressure did not come solely from the police, but also from internal conflicts and competition from external rivals. The confrontation with the 67 gang particularly inflicted severe damage on GES, as the 67 gang was not only well organized, but also more ruthless. The rise of the 67 gang added further strain, leading to ongoing violent clashes that drained the resources and morale of the G gang. From a once powerful organization, the G gang had now fragmented into smaller groups, lacking cohesion and the ability to maintain power. Between 2010 and 2012, the G gang was involved in at least 3 murders, notably the killing of 15-year-old Zach Olumegbon in 2010. Zach was ambushed and stabbed to death just outside his school, shocking the entire area. Another tragic incident occurred in 2012 when 5-year-old Thusha Kamaleswaran was shot by gang members aiming at a rival, but inadvertently hitting an innocent victim. Stabbings occurred continuously, with conflicts ending in serious injuries or even death. Not content with stabbings, the G gang also carried out many brazen shootings. One shocking incident involved a member of the PYG gang driving into GES territory and firing at a group of its members. The G gang's drug trafficking operations were also sophisticated and extended beyond the Brixton area. By 2014, police raids revealed that the gang had connections to several other areas, such as Edinburgh, Essex, and Bedfordshire, involving money laundering and organized crime. Stories from those who experienced the G gang's reign offer a realistic view of their impact. A former member who left the gang shared that at its peak, the gang had over 100 members, all engaged in criminal activities. The pressure of violence and loyalty became an unbearable burden. The world of the G gang, once filled with power and fear, now crumbled under the weight of its own brutal actions. What do you think about this story? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support me. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.